To many players, MultiVersus has a huge problem, and by huge, I mean massive. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We're talking about the good old TB, and no, I ain't talking about the disease. I'm talking about that good old-fashioned teabagging. Now, don't be shy. Y'all know exactly what I mean. It looks something like this.
Yes, an excellent victory.
Now, it's not just teabagging, it's also emotes. Sometimes players will even message you after the game, but let's just focus on the in-game mechanics because that's not something that player-first games can control. Just turn your privacy settings on and then people can't message you. Now, in terms of BMing, bad manners, in terms of BMing in games, I mean, that's been around for centuries. I mean, ever since multiplayer games was a thing, I mean, it's been around. So to some, it might be confusing on how people have an issue with this. But don't worry, because that's exactly what we're talking about today, the toxicity in MultiVersus. Now, there's two factors that really goes into my emotions when I'm playing online and I deal with a teabagger or someone who's just BMing. What type of day am I having and how did you end up winning? A lot of the players that teabag usually end up winning in some sort of scummy way. Most players that really skillfully beat you don't usually BM that often, but whether it's in 1v1s or 2v2s, you will see it more often than not. Now, of course, if anyone brings this up in the MultiVersus community, you're usually met with this response. Well, just beat them and they can't teabag you. Or another one, which doesn't really help solve the problem really. Just beat them and then you can teabag them and then that solves that somehow. I don't really understand that one, but I do understand the just beat them part. However, most of the time they won't offer you a rematch, so you're really just stuck with being teabagged. So basically the advice is never lose, which just is impossible. When we're talking about other games like Street Fighter, Tekken, Dungeon Fighter Duel, Guilty Gear, y'all know all these other fighting games, Smash Brothers included, All-Stars Brawl included. When we're talking about all these other games, usually that's not present. What you'll usually see in these fighting games is when they win one round, you can no longer control your character. But your character still does something. The character will taunt, walk around, do whatever. They will effectively BM. Now you might be thinking, well, that's the same thing. People should be mad at that game. Well, it's not the same thing because I don't think many players have a problem with taunting. Taunting is literally in every game. It's in competitive sports. Like, taunting is okay most of the time. Usually the issue is when it goes too far. Again, even in real sports. Then in the same games, after the player beats the opponent, what do you see? You'll see an end screen of the character doing some animation, maybe talking some crap, maybe BMing a little bit, but it's usually just the end of the game. Once again, the player does not have control over what happens at the end of the match. It cuts to the end and you'll see the actual character play the animation. Some characters have downright disrespectful endings and some don't. They just kind of talk. The main thing with MultiVersus is when you lose or win, you are stuck at this screen for about 5 seconds, effectively giving the opponent ample time to just BM you for no reason. Now, obviously, based off the stamps in the game, the developers at Player First Games clearly wanted you to poke a little fun. They wanted you to BM a little bit. Now, as I said in other games, usually this isn't a thing. Yes, you'll see maybe crouching and teabagging during the match where you can be active and go get them, but after the game is over, that's not a thing. There is no you sit there and do whatever you want for a few seconds after. And as I said before, you are forced to sit and watch that. It's not skippable. You are literally forced to sit there for like 5 seconds and just get taunted. Now, of course, you have one half that's like, it's just a video game, dude. But you have the other half that's like, I don't want to deal with this every single match, especially because they don't rematch. And honestly, I'm on that spectrum. Now, I personally have thick skin. A lot of the games that I've played that had teabagging in them, and we used to that stuff. But again, I was never forced to watch it after the game is over. That's a whole new thing entirely. Usually, if I were to get teabagged, I get back up and, you know, so you still have a chance to fight. And should the match end, they can't teabag anymore. Literally one of the most disrespectful games that I've ever played before, and it's one of my favorite series ever, is Gears of War. Gears of War has something called executions, and in certain iterations of Gears of War, you can punch someone in the face for literally a span of 5 to 10 seconds. Their teammates can kick you, they can shoot guns, they can throw grenades at you. It's the most disrespectful thing ever. But again, should it have gotten to that point, it's literally because you got dogged on. It was never just a, I'm playing a character that's stronger, or I'm using a cheap tactic and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't really happen. And honestly, even in Gears of War, it was pretty infrequent. It didn't happen all the time. It just happened every now and then. MultiVersus, you can lose to the most dumbest things, and on top of that, you get it every single match. Now, one of the worst parts about knowing you're gonna get it almost every match is the fact that most players probably don't even want to play PvP anymore. You're gonna queue knowing that if you lose, you're gonna get BM'd for 5 seconds at the end of the screen. Whether or not you're beat by someone skillful, you are gonna get BM'd, which means every single time that you lose, you're gonna get a slap in the face. When you lose in a game, it sucks, but the point is you're supposed to lose and get better. However, if I lose in a game, which already sucks, then I get disrespected for 5 seconds after, like bro, that's a little overkill. And honestly, it gets to the point where learning isn't even fun anymore because every single time I lose, I can't have fun when I'm getting BM'd all the time. Now that's not how I feel, but I understand how others feel in that situation. So you might be thinking, well, how can they fix this issue? Well, crouching is literally in the game, so therefore it's a mechanic, so it's kind of hard to just say fix that issue. However, if they had the ability to disable crouching at the end screen, that right there would be the most simple fix ever. You can't crouch after. If someone's gonna be upset because they can't teabag after a win anymore, like bro, that's a little sus. Keep the ability to move around, keep the ability to use stamps, to taunt, but just remove that crouch button. Again, I don't think taunting is bad, and I don't think using emotes is bad. That's literally almost in every single game. But teabagging is a player-made thing that's just very disrespectful. Even veterans find teabagging disrespectful, so I don't even want to know what new players think. Another solution, and this is something that I'm not sure I would go for, is just having the victory screen just cut off or shorten in some sort of fashion. Like once you win, maybe give them a second or two to do whatever and then dip out. It doesn't really resolve the issue, and honestly, a lot of the taunts that you might buy or that you want to use last longer than a second. So I think the best thing is just removing crouch on the victory screen. If that were indeed possible player first games, I think that right there would just solve all this right now. Again, getting teabagged during the match I think is okay. Most games allow behavior during the match because you still have a fighting chance to make something happen. But there are not many games that force you to sit at an end screen getting disrespected by the opponent and you can't do anything about it. But of course, you know me, it's not about what Poppin' Often with Lofton thinks, it's about what you think. I love reading your comments and I love responding to your comments, so let me know down below. Is MultiVersus a little bit too toxic right now and should they do something about it? Or you think having players get BM'd at the end screen is okay, they should just win more? Also, for those true Poppin' Often with Lofton fans that made it this far, I have a podcast coming out sometime this week. I don't really know when I'll be able to get it out because it's really based off what the developers do, but we're gonna talk about a lot of things, and this includes the mid-season update. So if you wanna talk about it, if you're interested in knowing my thoughts on everything, make sure you subscribe, that way you are notified. And until next time, you know what I always say, if you guys are doing what? Poppin' Often with Lofton.